right. So if you're listening to this, you're probably interested in real estate investment in the Middle East, specifically SinoGulf Investment Company.
Yeah.
And when I was looking over the research you sent over, I got to say, I was pretty intrigued.
Interesting.
We're going to go a bit deeper than the headlines. And oh man, wait till you hear about this deal they made with Etihad Airways.
It's pretty amazing what they've been able to do. I mean, building a portfolio worth over $500 million US,
Wow.
all while following Shariah principles.
Seriously.
It's not easy to pull off, and it really shows their ability to attract investors who want financial returns,
Sure.
but also ethical alignment in their investments.
So just take me back to the beginning. What is SinoGulf? What's their story?
So they were founded in 2003,
Okay.
right here in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
And their focus is real estate investment and development across the Middle East and North Africa.
Okay.
But they're not just like flipping properties, They're actually structured as a fully integrated fund and asset manager.
So they're managing investments, but they're also involved in actually developing these projects.
Yes.
That sounds really complicated.
Yeah, it is. And it takes a lot of expertise in different areas,
Yeah.
You've got the financial side, the construction, legal, and then on top of all that, Shariah compliance, which affects every decision they make. It's kind of like this giant complex puzzle.
So you've mentioned their portfolio a few times, and obviously it's impressive. What really makes SinoGulf tick? What's their secret sauce?
It's more than just buy low, sell high.
Right.
That's where the 4 core divisions come in.
Oh.
So first you've got fund and asset management,
Okay.
which as you can imagine is all about maximizing those returns for investors.
Good sense.
But then there's corporate finance.
Okay.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. That team handles the real nitty-gritty financial modeling feasibility studies and all the ins and outs of working with financial institutions.
So they're doing all their due diligence before they even start digging?
Exactly. And remember, every single step has to align with Shariah principles.
Right, of course.
Then there's development management.
Okay.
This is where the rubber meets the road. These are the folks overseeing construction, making sure projects are on time and on budget.
Yeah.
And finally, you have the professional support and accounts division.
Okay.
Handling all the back office stuff. Legal compliance, regulatory, you name it.
So it sounds like they have experts for every stage of the process,
Like,
all while making sure everything follows Islamic finance principles.
That's the idea.
But what does this actually look like in real life? Can you give me an example of a project that shows all of this in action?
Sure. Let's take a look at International Tower.
Okay.
This is a LLE Gold Grade A office building
Fancy.
in Abu Dhabi's capital center.
Okay.
It's huge, 40,000 square meters,
Wow.
and home to some major companies like AECOM and BAE Aerospace.
Big names.
This is a great example of SinoGulf's ability to develop these high-quality, sustainable properties
Right.
that attract those top-tier tenants.
So it's not just about building something, it's about attracting the right tenants.
Yeah.
Creating a place where people actually want to be.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So-
What about residential? Do they do any residential projects?
They do. One example is Capitol House,
Okay.
also in Capital Center.
Mm-hmm.
It's a residential development with over 300 units.
Wow.
And here's the interesting part. The entire building is leased to Etihad Airways
Really?
on a 10-year contract.
Oh, wow.
Guaranteed income, you see.
That's incredible.
It really highlights their long-term strategic thinking.
Yeah, that Etihad Airways deal is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It seems that they're really thinking outside the box when it comes to securing revenue.
Mhm.
So they're doing these big projects in Abu Dhabi. But are they limited to just Abu Dhabi? What about the rest of the region?
Not at all. They're definitely not limiting themselves. So, for example, there's Abdali Views.
Okay.
It's a 23-story residential complex in Amman, Jordan,
Wow.
catering to young urban professionals.
Okay.
Completely different market, different demographic, shows their reach and their ability to adapt to different situations.
So we've talked about their diverse portfolio, but who are the people actually making this happen? Who's steering this ship?
Yeah, that's a key part of the story. SinoGulf's leadership is this really interesting blend of financial expertise and deep understanding of Islamic finance.
Right.
So you have Hussein Salah bin Farid al-Awlaki, the chairman.
Okay.
He's a co-founder with decades of experience in Islamic finance.
Wow.
He's really a pioneer in the field. And his vision has been instrumental in shaping SinoGulf's approach.
He can't be the only one, though, right?
Oh, no.
There must be a few other key players who helped shape this company.
You're right. There's Andrew Clout, the non-executive director.
Okay.
He's another co-founder. And he brings this wealth of knowledge in finance and structured finance. He's been so important in establishing SinoGulf as this sophisticated fund and asset manager.
It's cool how their expertise really complements each other.
It really does.
So we've got the chairman, the non-executive director. Who else rounds out this leadership team?
And then there's Chris Orell, the CEO.
Okay.
He's been with the company since 2006.
All right.
And has overseen some really significant growth.
Oh, yeah.
During his time, assets under management have quadrupled.
Wow.
And they obtained their DFSA license, which is a really big deal in the financial world.
So they've got this really strong leadership team.
They do.
A diverse portfolio of projects and a clear commitment to both financial success and Islamic principles.
Exactly.
But here's something I've been wondering. How do they deal with the risks that come with being in such a complex industry? I mean, real estate is notoriously volatile.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's something that SinoGulf takes very seriously. They're not just about making a quick buck. They're in it for the long haul.
Right.
And that requires a really strong approach to risk management and compliance.
Okay, so break it down for me. What does that look like in practice?
They adhere to the highest standards of corporate governance and anti-money laundering practices.
Okay.
They have these regular risk assessments, ongoing staff training, comprehensive compliance measures. It's not just about picking boxes.
Gotcha.
It's about really building a culture of responsibility and transparency.
So they're going above and beyond.
Exactly. And that's really what sets them apart. They understand that success isn't just about the bottom line. It's about doing things the right way, ethically and sustainably.
You know what's really been piquing my interest?
What's that?
This whole Shariah compliance thing, we've touched on it a little bit,
Right.
but I want to dive deeper. What are the actual practical implications of integrating these principles into real estate investment? Does it limit them at all?
That's a great question, and it's a common misconception. Actually, adhering to Shariah principles doesn't limit them.
Really?
It actually opens up these really unique opportunities and gives them a distinct advantage.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Let's definitely explore that in more detail in the next part.
Yeah.
We can unpack the specifics of Shariah-compliant real estate,
Yeah.
the challenges and the opportunities.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after a quick break to dive into this fascinating world of Shariah-compliant real estate.
Looking forward to it.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back and ready to unpack this whole Shariah-compliant real estate thing.
Yeah.
I have to admit, before digging into this research, I really didn't know much about it.
Yeah, it's an area that often gets oversimplified. People hear Shariah compliant and they think it's just about avoiding certain things.
Like what?
Like no investing in casinos or alcohol production. And while that's true, there's so much more to it. It really goes to the heart of how Islamic finance works.
So it's not just about saying no to specific industries.
Right.
It's about a whole different approach to finance.
Exactly. The fundamental principle is the prohibition of interest,
Okay.
also known as riba.
Right.
So traditional financing models that rely on interest payments are just off the table. That sounds like it would make real estate investment really difficult.
Yeah.
How do they even finance projects without using traditional mortgages or loans with interest rates?
It definitely requires some creativity, but Islamic finance has developed its own set of tools and models.
Okay.
For example, SinoGulf often utilizes a model called Murabaha.
Murbaha.
Yeah.
That rings a bell. But remind me, what is that exactly?
So imagine you want to buy a property.
Okay.
Instead of giving you a loan with interest, a Murabaha agreement involves the company buying the property outright
Okay.
and then selling it to you at a marked up price.
Gotcha.
This markup is agreed upon upfront and represents their profit rather than interest.
So it's kind of like a cost plus model, but instead of interest, they're building their profit into the sale price.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever. Are there any other Islamic finance models that they use?
Yeah, another common one is called ijara,
Ijara.
which is similar to a lease-to-own agreement.
Okay.
So the company buys the property and leases it to you. Over time, your lease payments gradually transfer ownership of the property to you.
These models seem pretty complex.
It can be, yeah.
But I can see how they align with the principles of Islamic finance. It's not just about avoiding certain things.
Right.
It's about finding alternative ways to structure these transactions that are ethical and fair.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about creating a system that promotes shared risk and reward and avoids the exploitation that can sometimes come from interest-based financing.
So we've talked about the financial side of things,
Right.
but I'm also curious about the social impact. Does adhering to Shariah principles affect how SinoGulf interacts with the communities where they develop these projects?
Absolutely. Their commitment to social responsibility goes beyond just compliance.
Okay.
They really see themselves as partners
Hmm.
in building these thriving communities.
Can you give me some examples? How does it actually play out?
One way is through their focus on local sourcing.
Okay.
Whenever possible, they use local materials and contractors for their projects.
Oh, wow.
This ensures quality, but it also stimulates the local economy and creates jobs.
So they're not just coming in, building something and leaving. They're really trying to be a part of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other ways they show this commitment to community engagement?
They're also really involved in philanthropy. They support a whole range of local charities and nonprofit organizations that are addressing social issues like education, healthcare, and poverty.
So they're really trying to make a positive impact on these communities.
They are. And this approach resonates with a growing number of investors who are looking for opportunities that align with their own values.
Right.
People want to feel good about where their money is going
Of course.
and know that it's being used to make a positive difference.
It's like that saying, doing well by doing good. But, when you think about all the complexities involved navigating these principles, the expertise in Islamic finance, the focus on community engagement, it seems like it would take a special kind of leader to make it all work. We've talked about the chairman, the non-executive director, but I'm really interested to learn more about the CEO, Chris Orell.
Yeah.
He seems to be the one holding it all together.
He really is. He's been with SinoGulf since 2006, and his leadership has been key to their success. He brings this really unique combination of skills to the table.
Like what?
Financial expertise, strategic thinking, and this deep understanding of the Middle Eastern real estate market.
And he really seems to believe in their mission.
He does.
You can tell when he talks about the company and its values.
Yeah.
So what's his story? How did he end up leading this unique company?
His journey's pretty interesting. He started his career in the UK, working in finance and investment banking.
Okay.
He spent years honing his skills and developing a deep understanding of financial principles and how markets work.
So he had a solid financial background before coming to the Middle East?
He did. What drew him to this region was the dynamism, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the huge potential.
So he wanted to be part of something big.
Exactly. He saw the Middle East as a region that was rapidly transforming, and he wanted to contribute to its development.
And it sounds like he found the perfect platform to do that with SinoGulf.
He did. He joined the company in 2006, and his impact was immediate.
Really?
His financial expertise, his strategic vision, and his ability to build relationships
Yeah.
quickly made him a valuable asset to the company.
And he's clearly played a big role in their growth over the past decade or so.
Absolutely. Under his leadership, SinoGulf's assets under management have quadrupled.
Wow.
They've expanded their portfolio to include projects across the Middle East and North Africa, and they've really solidified their position as a leader in Shariah-compliant real estate investment.
It's really impressive what they've accomplished.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're not slowing down.
Yeah.
What's next for SinoGulf? What are their plans for the future?
They're always looking for ways to innovate and expand their reach.
Okay.
They're exploring new markets, new types of developments, and new ways to use technology to improve their operations and deliver even more value to their investors.
Can you give us any hints about what they're working on? Any exciting new projects on the horizon?
They're really focusing on sustainable and environmentally friendly developments.
That's great.
They understand how important green building practices are becoming,
Yeah.
and they want to be at the forefront of that movement.
It sounds like they're not content with just keeping things the same. They want to push the boundaries of what's possible in Shariah-compliant real estate.
That's what makes them so interesting to follow. They're not just a real estate company. They're a force for positive change in the region.
Yeah.
What really struck you about their approach?
The more we talk about this commitment to Shariah principles, the more curious I get. We've talked about the financial models, the social impact, but what does it mean for the actual buildings they create? What does a Shariah-compliant building look like?
That's a great question. It's not always obvious, but there are certain design elements and considerations that reflect these principles.
I'm really intrigued to learn more about this. It's like a whole hidden world of architecture.
Let's definitely dive into that in the next part. We'll explore the unique features of Shariah-compliant design
Yeah.
and how they create spaces that are both beautiful and in line with Islamic values.
All right, so we've talked about the finances, the social impact, the leadership behind SinoGulf, and now I'm ready for the grand finale. What does Sharia-compliant architecture actually look like? Is it like super obvious when you walk into one of their buildings?
It's not like you'll see a big sign that says Shariah-compliant building.
Right.
It's much more subtle than that. Think of it as like a design philosophy that's kind of woven into the building itself.
So what are some of the things I should be looking for? What makes it different?
One of the main principles is privacy, particularly between genders. So you often see separate prayer spaces for men and women,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes even separate entrances or walkways.
Interesting. I've noticed that in mosques,
Right.
but I never thought about how that would apply to an office building or residential complex.
Yeah, it's all about creating spaces that respect cultural sensitivities
Yeah.
and make sure everyone feels comfortable. And it's not just about physical separation either.
Okay.
They use things like screens, partitions, and landscaping to create a sense of privacy and visual separation.
So even the layout of the building can reflect these principles.
Exactly.
What else should I be paying attention to?
Orientation is another big one. You know how mosques are always oriented towards Mecca?
Right.
Well, that's not always possible for other types of buildings.
Sure.
But that concept of directionality is still important.
So the way a building is placed on the site can have like spiritual significance.
Exactly. Designers really think about the direction of sunlight, the prevailing winds, even the surrounding environment to make sure the spaces are harmonious with nature and aligned with Islamic principles.
So it's not just about looks. It's about creating a certain feeling.
Think about light and ventilation.
Okay.
These are seen as blessings in Islamic tradition.
Mhm.
So Sharia-compliant architecture often uses a lot of natural light, open spaces and courtyards to create this sense of openness and connection to nature.
Yeah, that sounds really peaceful.
Exactly. That's the goal. And then there's the materials they use. Natural materials like wood, stone, and marble are often preferred.
It's funny how those traditional materials are now considered so modern and eco-friendly.
Right. It's like things come full circle. Sustainability is also really important.
Makes sense.
Sharia-compliant architecture emphasizes being efficient with resources, minimizing waste, and making sure buildings work with the environment, not against it.
So it's like ancient wisdom meeting modern sustainability.
I like that. It's a really holistic approach to design
Mm-hmm.
that thinks about not just the building itself, but the spiritual, social, and environmental impact as well.
This is really fascinating. I feel like I'm seeing buildings in a whole new way. So to bring it back to SinoGulf, do they always use these design principles in all of their projects?
They're very aware of these principles,
Okay.
and they work closely with architects and designers who understand this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How much they incorporate these elements really depends on the project, the client, and the local context.
So if I walked into a SinoGulf building, would I automatically know it was Sharia compliant?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's subtle, like the way the building is positioned or how much natural light it uses. Other times it's more obvious, like the design of prayer spaces or the use of geometric patterns and calligraphy, which are common in Islamic art.
It sounds like it's not about following a strict set of rules. It's more about creating a certain feeling or atmosphere.
Exactly. It's about creating spaces that are functional and beautiful, but also have that sense of spirituality, tranquility, and respect for Islamic values.
This deep dive into SinoGulf has been really eye-opening. We started with a company profile, and we ended up talking about Islamic finance, community development, and even architecture.
It's amazing how it all ties together, right?
It is.
It shows that business isn't just about the numbers. It's about people values and how we impact the world around us.
So for our listeners who are now as fascinated with SinoGulf as we are, what's the key takeaway here?
I think it's that SinoGulf is more than just a successful real estate company. They've found a way to make ethical principles and social responsibility core parts of their business. And they're doing it in a way that's both profitable and impactful.
It's a really inspiring story, and it makes you wonder what other companies are out there finding creative ways to combine profit with purpose.
That's a great question. And it reminds us that we as investors and consumers have the power to support businesses that reflect our own values.
Absolutely. So the next time you see a beautiful building, take a minute to think about the story behind it. Who built it? Why did they build it? And what kind of impact is it having on the world?
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into SinoGulf. It's been a pleasure. And as always, keep those brains buzzing.